All right, all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High. While Yahweh Shai, that's your brother Amathai, acquired first name. IQ is all the same. We're here back again, part three of who are the 10 tribes of Israel today. This is a however long series is going to be. We're probably rounded out at four. And this is for Feed the Lions, another episode for edification for the 12 tribes scattered abroad throughout the four corners of the earth. This is for you, Blacks, Native Americans, and Hispanics. This knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is for you. Now, we're going to get right into it. We're going to continue on. And this is information for those looking for research, study, looking for more information regarding the 10 tribes of Israel, looking to build your portfolios of information. Just looking at the views, maybe, people ain't catching it, or you already know, or you just ain't interested in learning about Native American and Hispanic history. Whatever the case may be, it's all good. The truth still must be told. We still have to put this word out. We still got to get it together. All right. So if you would do your brother that solid, man, make sure you wipe your feet when you came on in here. Share, like, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And we're going to go right into the information. We're going to pick up where we left off from part two. And continue on to reading. Maybe it's, I would say, man, you want to hide something from a, what, put it in the book. So maybe it's the reading that doesn't, draw the attention of folks sometimes. I'm not sure, but either way, it's all good. All right. So we're going to pick it up here. We're going to get into a little bit more on the archaeological side. This is a book called Mound Builders of Ancient America, the Archaeology of a Myth by Robert Silverberg. Okay, this is on page 51. And when you're talking about the mound builders, we're talking about the megalithic structures that we do see here in places like Machu Picchu, Tulum. You see them in various places all throughout the Americas. Temple built structures or mound builded structures, pyramid type structures, if you will. So we're not going to only solely say that Egypt is the only place with pyramids. If we're dealing in some historical information, how about we just let me open up another tab here, and we'll just look at basic information. And I shouldn't say basic because my elder Ibaria Allen, who's he used to say this: nothing is ever basic with the Most High. Don't ever say that. And that's a true testimony that I take to heart. So some of the more beginning or fundamental knowledge that we take in, especially during the time of Passover, we always talk about Exodus chapter 1. All right. And we're just going to read verse 11. Verse 11 in Exodus chapter 1 says, therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramesses. Right. So we're never going to take the claim and say that the Israelites built all of Egypt. We did not. It just gave you the two cities that we did build, Pithom and Ramesses. Upper Egypt already had, pyramids and construction, temples that was already built down there. We did our part and gathered the knowledge and information and understanding, and the knowledge and the wisdom and understanding of how to build such structures, right? So when we see things like that being mirrored in Central America, Mexico, South America, and the North Americas, we know that our people had that same knowledge. Now you can say, yeah, there was pyramids, there's underwater pyramids in Japan, India. I mean, they're all over the place. So there's not a monopoly on the pyramid structures. However, dating back to where the knowledge of information could have came from on how to construct those things, the Israelites and the Hebrews definitely had a hand in doing those things. And it's a set thing that was set to follow us, okay? Whether we go. These are things that we have to take notice of. And we're going to see a couple scriptures in a minute. Now, this is on page 51. It says, yet some inhabitants of the Americas were clearly superior to others. And the origin of such higher peoples as the Aztecs, the Mayas, and the Incas aroused such fanciful thought long before the mound builders entered the story. So they're acknowledging that there was already dynastic empires. There was already structural uh, uh, things that were built regarding temples, pyramids, so forth and so on, built by the Aztec, Mayas, and Incas, right? Long before they were understanding about the mound building cultures that was developed by the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, so forth and so on, right? One thing's for sure, two things for certain. All of those people are the same people, the Israelites, all right? Now it says the most persistent theory was that the Indians, or at least the cleverest of them, were descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. I'm gonna read that again. The most persistent theory was that the Indians, or at least the cleverest of them, were descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Edward Barrowood regarded this as a quote vain and capricious fantasy in his book of 1614, but it endured despite all scorn and ultimately entangled itself thoroughly in the history of the mound builders. So, yeah, one one devil came out and tried to say, "Oh, this is all vain and it's all fantasy. There's no way." But it said that despite all the scorn, it ultimately entangled itself thoroughly in the history of the mound builders. So it always played. It was never was going to be able to stop the true facts in regards to the links between the 10 lost tribes of Israel and the Native Americans. Continued on, it says the biblical account describes how after the death of King Solomon, the 12 Hebrew tribes divided into two kingdoms, Israel in the north, Judah southward, from a point of a few miles north of Jerusalem. Both kingdoms had their troubles, but Israel in particular, developed a tendency to backslide into idolatry. Despite the threats and admonitions of their prophets, the Israelites built them high places, mounds in all their cities, as we learn in 2 Kings 17. So let's look at that real quick. 2 Kings 17, and we're going to pick it up at verse 7. We'll read down to probably around verse 11. It says, 2 Kings 17 and 7. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against Yahweh their power. And they built them high places in all the cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced cities. Right. So the high places were the mountainous regions, the temples that was being built on mountaintops, altars that they were doing. Mount Perazim was one of them. And there was another one. I want to say Gerizim, but I might be off on that. I'm just going off of memory. But nonetheless, this is where you see the high places. And it says, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. Verse 10, and they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen, whom the Most High Yahweh carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yahweh to anger. For they serve idols, whereof Yahweh had said unto them, ye shall not do this thing. So do you see where the conflict came into play? See, they were building up idols and altars to burn incense and idols in the high places. Let me get one more. Where's that at? Okay, give me 1 second. It's gonna be in where's that one at? Second Kings 23. This is the one. As a matter of fact, we're just gonna read verse 1 down to 3. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of Yahweh, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of Yahweh. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before Yahweh to walk after Yahweh and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and with all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book, and all the people stood to the covenant. Verse 4. And the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of Yahweh all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. Verse 5. And he put down the idolatrous priests, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem, them also that burn incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. So even the southern kingdom at one point were caught up in idolatry, building high places and altars of worship to burn incense and offer sacrifice unto Baal, planetary worship, stargazing, zodiac, all that stuff. The sun, the moon, the planets, and all the host of heaven, we were getting caught up in. That's why Jeremiah 10:2 says, learn not the way of the heathen. Right? So getting back into this is just giving you more evidences of these were traditions, and these were things that was already embedded in our spirits that we were doing, but we were doing it in unrighteousness. Dropping down, it says, the Assyrians fell upon the idolatrous Israelites and carried them off into captivity. The climax coming in 722 BC, when Sargon of Assyria captured Israel's capital and removed 27,290 of its inhabitants, settling them in Halah and in the harbor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Eventually, the surviving kingdom of Judah fell too, and its population was led into exile in Babylonia. But these Hebrews were later allowed to return to Palestine. Of the vanished 10 northern tribes of Israel, nothing more was heard. Well, it was heard, the second Ezra, the 13th chapter, in the 40th verse, which we talked about already. All right, as they came over to Arsareth. Now, let's continue on page 52. It says, this was not the only far-fetched theory, as we see from a passage in Fray Gregorius Garcia book of 1607, the origin of the Indians of the New World. The Indians proceed neither from one nation or people, nor have they come from one part alone of the old world, or by the same road, or at the same time, in the same way, or for the same reason. Some are probably descended from the Carthaginians, others from the 10 lost tribes, and other Israelites, others from the lost Atlanteans, from the Greeks and the Phoenicians, and still others from the Chinese. So there's always been speculation on where and who these people are, but there's always been a linkage between the 10 lost tribes and the Israelites regarding them. All these other, the Carthaginians, the Greeks, the Phoenicians, the Chinese, these are all things that throw our people off, because at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, and we're seeing many a witness. And this ain't even everything. There's plenty of more information. I'm just giving you a good, solid foundation to give you understanding. I figured maybe around 100 slides should be enough to say, hey, all of this compiled information can't be coincidence. You're not going to find the same amount of references regarding them being the Chinese, the Tartars, the Carthaginians, or the Greeks, or anything else. But you will find them with the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Continuing on, so the 17th century adventurers named Aaron, Levi, and Rabbi Manasseh ben Israel of Amsterdam about his visit to a colony of Jewish Indians in Peru. Descended from the lost tribe of Reuben, the rabbi published this tale in a book, The Hope of Israel, which aroused the sympathetic interest of Oliver Cromwell and other English Puritans. So yeah, the Hope of Israel is another good book by Rabbi Manasseh ben Israel, and them linking. And that's why, take it for what you will. This is why we don't 100% coincide with the chart, because you've got an eyewitness and a primary source that said that he went to Peru, and they said they were descendants of Reuben. Now the chart will say that the Reubenites are the Seminole Indians, or the Florida Everglades. I believe after they left the Everglades, some of them went to Mississippi. The chart was saying Peru, that they're of uh I want to say Asher. I haven't taught the chart in damn near 20 years. Maybe a little less than that. Let me stop capping. But at least 15, uh at least that long. But nonetheless, we're seeing a conflict of eyewitness testimony where some were saying that the Reubenites were actually in Peru. Nonetheless, and be that as it may, not contentious about that. One thing's for sure, two things for certain that we will agree on is that they were Israelites, no doubt. That the Inca or the people that was in Peru, they were of Israelite stock. And that's according to eyewitness testimony, that's according to archaeology, that's according to prophecy and history. Now, let's continue on. It says the Quaker William Penn also subscribed to the 10 Lost Tribe theory. He remarked that when among the Indians, he could easily imagine himself in the Jewish quarter of London. So great were the resemblances of features and gestures between Indians and Jews. The most dedicated of the lost tribesmen was the eccentric 19th century Irish peer, Lord Kingsborough, who in the 1820s contracted the obsession that the Mayas and Aztecs were of Hebraic extraction, and who in 1830 released the first of 9 ponderous folio volumes to prove it. He consumed his entire inheritance to produce these elegant books and died in Dublin, in a Dublin's debtor prison. So you see what happens to, the Edomites, man. They say a broke clock is even right once a day. So even the so-called white man will have to confess it. He will give the information as the Most High makes him provide that information. So you had an Irish Edomite, Lord Kingsborough, 1820. He said he was obsessed with the understanding, all the information he was gathering, linking the Mayas and the Aztecs to a Hebraic extraction. Whatever he made 9 volumes of information. I like to get a hold of those. They probably banned or exorbitant amount of prices or who knows what. But ended up in debt. Went broke with his obsession of trying to find out who these people were and making the linkage between them and the Israelites. Let's continue on. Page 53. Then he points out the Jews on many great occasions assembled at Gilgal. The name of the place signifies a heap. Here is a pile of stones which were brought from the bed of the River Jordan and piled up on the spot where they encamped for the first night after they crossed that river. On their entrance into the promised land, let the reader examine similar piles of stones on the water of the Licking near Newark, in the counties of Perry, Pickaway, and Ross, all in Ohio, and then ask himself whether those who raised our monuments were not originally from Asia, Shiloh, where the Jews frequently assembled to transact great national affairs and perform acts of devotion. So when they say Asia, that was the area that you would consider where the Israelites were descended from. You hear like Asia Minor, that's all considered quote unquote modern day now, Middle East. That's a modern day term. So when they're saying Asia, they don't mean China. They don't mean the Philippines or whatever else, or East Asia. When you may have heard the terms back in the days, they would talk about the Asiatic black man, meaning that he was from the Africa or the Fertile Crescent region. So when they said that these people were, now they're gonna make it clear too, right here. Let me back up just a little bit. And it says whether those who raised our monuments were not originally from Asia, Shiloh, where the Jews frequently assembled to transact great national affairs and perform acts of devotion, was situated upon a high hill. When this place was deserted, the loftier hill of Zion was selected in its stead. Upon Sion's awful summit, the law of the Most High was promulgated. Moses was commanded to ascend a mountain to die. How many hundreds of mounds in this country are situated on the highest hills? surrounded by the most fertile soils. Traverse the counties of Licking, Franklin, Pickaway, and Ross. Examine the loftiest mounds and compare them with those described as being in Palestine. Through the wide world, such places seem to have been preferred by the men of ancient times who erected them. So, that's another reference where it's acknowledging the structural buildings, the mound temples, are resembling those of the Hebrews and the Israelites of the East. Continuing on, here you go. The mound builders. Hernando de Soto, the Spanish conquistador, who in 1540 through 1542 traversed what became the southeast United States, encountered many different mound builder peoples, perhaps descendants of the great Mississippian culture. The mound building tradition was still alive in the southeast during the mid 16th century. De Soto observed people living in fortified towns with lofty mounds and plazas and surmised that many of the mounds served as foundations for priestly temples near present-day Augusta, Georgia. De Soto encountered a mound building group ruled over by a queen, Kafacheki, who told him that the mounds within her territory served as the burial places for nobles. So here's one that you can see. I've been down to the ones in I've seen and been down to Machu Picchu and where's the other ones at? I forgot the ones that they called. There were some other ones names. I need to get them pictures. But there's some down in the outer parts of Cancun. I've been to some in Belize on the borders of Guatemala. These are some amazing structures, and you just looking at it, you saying, "Damn, how did our people build this stuff?" You know, but that's part of us being a special people. Here's some more. Another one in Mississippi, right? Yeah, Tikal, Machu Picchu, Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza is the other one I was trying to think of. Chichen Itza, Chopin, Monte Alban. These are all temple and mound cities, pyramid structures located in Mexico, Central America, South America, and you see them here in the Americas as well. So there's a kindred spirit when it came down to construction, when it came down to forms of worship, how things were done, burials, all leading back to the same customs that the Israelites were holding. All right. Now you see here, these are all places where you're going to find uh, mounds all across the Midwest to the East Coast, down south, right? So it's not just Mississippi. Okay. You see some scriptures here. We're going to go to a few of them. Looking at Revelation 12 and 16, it says, "And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth." How did the earth help the woman? The earth helps the woman through archaeology. When it means to open up the mouth, meaning that the findings that various archaeological researchers are out there excavating, the so-called blacks and the Native Americans and Hispanics, but we ain't got the money, let alone the expertise or the knowledge of dealing with archaeological excavations. That's why the Most High put the spirit on the so-called white man to do it. All for us to be able to redeem and have this information to show forth the proof of truth in these last days and times. See, swallow up the flood. What's the flood? The flood is the flood of lies. Okay, let's read that in Isaiah 28. We're going to read 16 and 17. It says, "Therefore, thus saith Yahweh power, behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste." So that cornerstone is still Yahweh Shai. All right. Verse 17. "Judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet, and the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the water shall overflow the hiding place." See, the refuge of lies, that's when it says that in Revelation 12:16, it's going to swallow up the flood and cast out the dragon. The archaeology, the earth, all things is going to help us swallow up and soak up all those lies so that we can see clearly. Psalms 85 and 11. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. So, yes, there's going to be a spirit of truth. The laws and the commandments are going to spring out of the earth. We're going to get the knowledge and the wisdom, the understanding, and the recollection of self in the days and times via prophecy. But it also says the truth is going to spring out of the earth. What's the truth? That archaeology is going to be another vital asset for us to prove who we are, um, according to the Bible. When we're talking about the lost sheep, lost. Why are we lost? We're lost to our nationality, our language, our history, our culture. We're lost to understanding who our enemies are. We're lost to knowing who our brothers and sisters are truly according to the Bible. Um, these things these are the things and the answers as to why Christ even said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." In John 8 and 32, it's because we have to understand the truth. What's going to help us get to that truth is going to be a myriad of things: prophecy, history, archaeology, language, culture, similarity. All these things are identifying factors to help us come to conclusions of who we are according to the scriptures. All right. So these are all places. Each dot that you see are places where there are mound temples all throughout the country. Many of y'all seen this before, the Los Lunas Decalogue stone. This is in New Mexico. This is the Ten Commandments written in ancient Hebrew in the Paleo Hebrew script, right? This also is a powerful scripture because let me see. I think there's another scripture in Sirach 45. Yeah. Let's just look at this as a scripture of understanding. How the Most High and what he does in order for us to remember us. Look at this. Sirach 45, verse 6. He exalted Aaron, a holy man, like unto himself, even his brother of the tribe of Levi. So this is going down the noble men, the righteous men, the prophets, the priests, and the histories, right? So they were talking about Moses before that. Now we're seeing here he's talking about Aaron. Now it says, in the everlasting covenant he made with him and gave him the priesthood among the people. He beautified him with comely ornaments and clothed him with a robe of glory. He put upon him perfect glory and strengthened him with rich garments, with breeches, with a long robe, and with the ephod. And he compassed him with pomegranates and with many golden bells round about, that as he went there might be a sound and a noise made that might be heard in the temple for a memorial to the children of his people. Now watch this. With the holy garment with gold and blue silk and purple, the work of the embroiderer, with the breastplate of judgment, and with the Urim and the Thummim. So this is going over Aaron's garments. You can read about it in Exodus 28th chapter. He said that he had the pomegranates, golden bells around it as his fringes. He said, when you hear them bells knocking, you knew Aaron was in the house. It says so the people can hear him in the temple doing the service and the work of the high priesthood, right? Now, watch this, verse 11. With twisted scarlet, the work of the cunning workman, with the precious stones graven like seals and set in gold, the work of the jeweler, with a writing engraved for a memorial after the number of the tribes of Israel. So it's talking about the breastplate and all of the 12 stones that was written after each tribe. But it said that writings and engravings were done as a memorial. What's a memorial? A memory. So when we see things like this, that when we find engravings and markings, it's to be noted as a memorial to spark the memory, right? You know, when we read about um, the Holy Comforter in John the 14th chapter and verse 26, it says, "But the Comforter, which is the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance, whatsoever I've said unto you." See, that's how we make a particular correlation. Total recall, if you will. The Holy Comforter, which is that Holy Spirit, is going to come upon all those which can receive it of the children of Israel. It's going to bear witness with our spirit. So when people look at the Los Lunar stone and the Los Lunas Decalogue stone, this is called. It's going to hit your spirit to say, man, that's amazing. Yeah, I see the correlation. Yes, I understand. I can understand. I see why these people are connected with the chosen people of the Most High God. Why? Because Romans 8:16 says the Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the power, right? So when we see those things, it's to be as a memorial, a remembrance that that's our people. John 14:26, one more time. But the Comforter, which is the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance whatsoever I said unto you. So we're talking about bringing things back to remembrance, engravings being done as memorials, right, of the 12 tribes. Here's the Grave Creek stone found in 1838 in Moundsville, West Virginia. You can see here the Paleo Hebrew is to our right. You see the stone here. And this is just a couple of them. I mean, there's findings in Ohio, there's findings in Mexico, among other places. All right. I'm just giving you a couple of highlights, 2 witnesses. You got to keep it moving. But here's the Grave Creek stone. You got the Los Lunas Decalogue. Like I said, there's others in Mexico, Ohio that's been found. I have some other ones. I just didn't include them in here for time's sake, but y'all should get the point, right? Let's continue on. Now here we see another correlation between, and it's another famous book, William Katz. It's one of the must-haves if you're an Israelite teacher, researcher. These are one of the books that's that's primary for our brothers to have, sisters as well. Black Indians, right? It's on page 56. This gives you the correlation between the Seminole and the so-called Negroes and their relationship, right? You can look at how decked out brothers are over here, man. We got the diadems on, the mitris, decked out, man. Now, let's read this scripture in Deuteronomy 23:15-16. Then we'll read from the book, right? Deuteronomy 23, and let's read 15 and 16 as a law, and you're gonna see why this is important as we read it. Verse 15: Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you, in that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates, where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. So if you had an escaped slave that was fleeing oppression, leaving off from his master, and he came to you, the Lord said you're supposed to give that man refuge. You're supposed to give that woman refuge. And you are not to say, oh, you're a slave. You're mine now. You done ran to me. You're going to be oppressed by me now. That was unlawful. We were supposed to harbor and shelter the oppressed. And those that left or found their way out from captivity, they were to be taken in. Now, let's see if the Seminoles kept this particular law via tradition in the spirit. Verse 56, page 56. It says, King Hatchie was also definite. I harbor no Negroes. I shall use force to stop any armed Americans from passing my towns or on my lands. Neither side would budge. For years, the U.S. sent in its enormous resources of troops, ships, and military supplies to crush Seminole resistance to its slave-holding way of life. Since it was clear the giant to the north would never accept an independent, armed, and confident free black community inside a slave-holding nation, the Seminoles braced for war. So the Seminoles were one of the preeminent tribes that resisted all manner of oppression coming from the so-called white man. Now, what we're going to see here is that there was a refuge that the escaped slaves would find within the Seminole Nation. They would bring in so-called blacks and allow them to be a part of the community and the Seminole Nation. So, matter of fact, I'm going to read up a little bit. It says, Congress greeted Jackson's brass illegality with a mixture of criticism and praise. In 1819, The U.S. paid Spain $5 million for Florida, making Jackson's seizure appear to be a real estate purchase. Now, U.S. authorities turn to the quote Seminole problem. From the beginning of its interest in Florida, the U.S. was astounded and infuriated by the easy mixture of races in the Seminole Nation. See, that again poses a problem with the tribe chart, but we'll leave that alone. It constantly sought to divide the two peoples. General Gaines told Seminole King Hatchie, "You harbor a great many of my black people among you at the Sewanee, and asked to go by you against them. Gaines even promised, I will not hurt anything belonging to you." So you see here that the Seminoles were providing refuge for the so-called blacks. And Esau was mad at that. That's one thing that you can always see. And you see Andrew Jackson um, upset that anytime our people come together, they always look to divide. They always look to bring confusion. They always look to bring enmity and hate amongst each other, man. It's divide and conquer all day long. Anytime black and brown get together, man, Esau says, oh, hell no. It's almost over for me then. I have to keep them divided. I have to keep them at each other's throats. I have to keep them confused. I have to keep them, at war with each other. So here you see he slides in and says, hey, look, I don't want no problems with you. I won't hurt anything belonging to you, but give me them Negroes. Those are my black people you holding. Now look what King Hatchie said. And he said this was a definite. I harbor no Negroes. I shall use force to stop any armed Americans from passing my towns or on my lands. Neither side would budge. So King Hatchie said, I don't harbor no Negroes. These are my brothers. What are you talking about harboring? This is my people. They're with me. We're all one. So there's no harboring. And Esau said, you goddamn, you know what he wanted to say. Give me them niggas. Now look, it says for years, the U.S. sent its enormous resources of troops, ships, and military supplies to crush Seminole resistance to a slaveholding way of life. Since it was clear the giant to the north would never accept an independent, armed, and confident free black community inside a slaveholding nation, Seminoles braced for war. Did you hear that? Free black community. So, according to the law, they said that if a slave came to you, you could not make them your own slave. They were free under you. So did they follow the law? The law, whether consciously or unconsciously? Absolutely. All right. And they went to war against Esau together, all in solidarity, fighting against the damn devil. All right, let's move on. So, just looking at that, we see not only the relationship between the Seminoles and the so-called blacks, but we also see that laws are being kept in the spirit. And they found a common enemy. There's another book called 500 Nations by Alvin Joseph Jr. Let's read a couple of passages out of this book. It says in Oklahoma, the word Kitoa basically originated from the Most High that gave us our name. But the word Kitoa has always been the name of the Cherokee people have called themselves. Now, Kitoa was the name that the Cherokees called themselves. Now, notice this. It says the word Cherokee does not have a meaning in our language. That's important. Because we always look for names with meaning. Okay. Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches and loving favor rather than silver and gold. So, sometimes people will wonder and question. And we talk about our slave names and why do we have Hebrew names now? And what made us change is because we look to shake our oppressors' labels, the names of our oppressors and the captivities. But not only that, but having a Hebrew name gives yourself character, gives yourself a greater understanding of your purpose and your spirit, right? When we give Hebrew names to brothers and sisters, we always have to do due diligence. We don't just say, hey, go in the Bible, pick out a name. It sounds good. You like that one? Cool. No. Many of the names have to and should represent you and your spirit. It should represent you and your character. Okay, that's one of the things that you got to you got to be conscious of, is that it ain't just picking out something that sounds good. It's about having meaning. It's about having purpose, because your name, and a good name that is to be chosen better than great riches. So if you notice here that the Cherokees were saying Cherokee doesn't really have no meaning. That's not us. Kitoa, that was our name. And it said that name came from the Most High. Now look at this, Sirach 41 and 12. It says, have regard to thy name, for that shall continue with thee above 1,000 great treasures of gold. So why is that important? Let's go back. So dealing with the tribal name that the so-called Cherokees acknowledge for themselves. It says the word Kitoa basically originated from the Most High. They gave us our name, but the word Kitoa has always been the name the Cherokees people have called themselves. The word Cherokee does not have a meaning in our language. The word Cherokee came from the words in the Choctaw language, meaning the inhabitants of the cave country. So the Choctaws is who called the Cherokees that. That's what the Choctaws called them. But it also had what? A meaning behind it, the inhabitants of the cave country. Now it says, and the word Kitoa means principal people or the chosen. So the so-called Cherokees said that their name derived from them being called the chosen, and that's the word that came from the Most High. Well, where'd that come from? You also already know Deuteronomy 7 and verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto Yahweh thy power. The Most High Yahweh thy power have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, or what? Chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Boom, there you have it. And the Cherokee said, our name is Kitoa. That came from the Most High. That means chosen. You know, our brethren, the Choctaws, they're the ones called us Cherokee because of the landmass and the regions that we dwelt in. So, inhabitants of the cave. So let's continue. Now here's another portion you might not be able to see. Let me blow it up a little bit. George Catlin painted this portrait of Tachi, a Cherokee man, in 1836, shown wearing a turban, a popular headgear among the Cherokees. Popular headgear among the Cherokees, right? The turban is the same thing that you would call a mitri. Some call it a mitre or a diadem, head wrap, turban. You know what we're talking about. So this is a popular headgear among the Cherokees. Tachi served as a guide for U.S. troops before the removal of the Cherokee in 1838. So this is just showing you another aspect of looking at it just via the dress code. Now look at them. Fringes all around, right? Got the mitri on, and that's where you also notice that in. I made mention of it earlier, Exodus 28, and this is where we'll also see one of the garments of the priest. There you see verse 37. And it says, and thou shalt put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitri, upon the forefront of the mitri it shall be. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts. And it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before Yahweh. So, just showing you that the mitri, or the head wrap, the quote unquote turban, was part of the dress code of the priests, the Israelites, so forth and so on, right? So that was also a common, popular head, quote unquote, gear worn by the Cherokee. Let's continue. Now look at this. It says, the great Father of life who made us and gave us this land to live upon, made the buffalo to afford us sustenance, said a warrior of the northern plains. Their meat is our only food. With their skins, we clothe ourselves and build our lodges. They are our only means of life, food, fuel, and clothing. We, like Arapuish, was talking to whites in the 19th century, but he might have been speaking as well for his ancestors of thousands of years before. The ancient Indians of the Northern Plains studied, revered, and established strong spiritual relationships between themselves and the buffalo, associating it directly with the Creator and centering most of their religious life around the great shaggy animal. And no wonder, no animal, the Indians said, ever gave so much of itself to to people. There was almost no part of the buffalo that plain Indian nations did not use: the tongue and the flesh for food, the rawhide for shields, buckets, moccasins, rattles, drums, bull bolts, ropes, splints, stones, and more. In other words, right? Now, why is that important? Because we know, according to the curses, let's get that in Deuteronomy 28. One of the curses was, let's see, verse 31. Deuteronomy 28:31. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thy enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. So all of the critical resources that we were utilizing from the farming communities uh, was going to be taken away from us. Thine ox shall be slain before thy eyes. That's in representation of the buffalo. The buffalo, we just got to seeing, was so vital to the existence of the Plains Indians that once the so-called white man went on his campaign slaughtering the buffalo, killing off resources for our people, that essentially meant for extinction or genocide for our people. We no longer have the same resources from the buffalo for flesh for food, shields, buckets, moccasins, rattles, drums. When those things were taken out, and you've seen the imagery, I didn't put any on here, but you've seen the imagery with the stacked a mile, I'm not a mile high, but 20 feet high, full of bones of the buffaloes that was taken out. The so-called white man, when he got into the fur trade and came in monopolizing and killing off the buffalo, taking them. I mean, he went and did the same things um, to destroy the Native Americans, the same thing that he did to the Aztec and the Mayans and everywhere else. Kill off the resources, cut off the food supply, make them either servant slaves or let them die. Henry Kissinger in State Memorandum 200 said that they were going to use food as a weapon for population control. They were going to use food and vaccines in third world countries as a means of weaponizing population control. Same thing that they did here. All right. Now, let's look at this also in the same book. The Indians and Columbus, the Spaniards made bets as to who would slit a man in two or cut off his head at one blow, or they opened up his bowels. They tore the babies from their mother's breasts by their feet and dashed their heads against the rocks. They spitted the bodies of other babes together with their mothers and all who were before them on their swords. They hanged Indians by the 13s in honor and reverence for our Redeemer and the 12 apostles. Do you see how wicked these damn people are? They put wood underneath, and with fire they burned the Indians alive. I saw all the above things. All these did they my own eyes witness. Eyewitness account, right? Getting back into primary sources. Friar Bartolome de las Casas. There's a book called Devastation of the Indies where he gave all his accounts while he was in uh, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, um, and amongst indigenous populations, man, how bad the Spaniards did our people. Now, notice we see here. So they were seeing how they can cut men in half, snatching babies from the mothers. How the heck? See, this thing is interesting. Snatching babies from the mothers, right? Stomping the fetuses out. Why is this not pulling up my apocrypha? Man, this thing is it's lucky, y'all. Obviously, it's not gonna let me get it searching. Let me go this way. Something got changed. All right, nonetheless. Uh, uh let's look at Second Maccabees 6, I believe it is. And is this the one? Yeah, here we go, verse 10. Now, first we're just gonna read verse 6, and then we drop down to verse 10. It says, neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient fasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So the Greeks were outlawing, banishing, persecuting anybody who proclaimed himself to be a Jew or keeping the feast days or keeping the laws in general, right? They were trying to compel everybody to follow after Greek customs, worshiping the Bacchus and the Bacchus feast and everything else. Now, look what happened to these women. Verse 10. For there were two women brought who had circumcised their children, whom they had openly led round about the city, the babes handing at their breasts, they cast them down headlong from the wall. Did you hear that? While they were breastfeeding, they would snatch the babies up, right? Grab the baby, seize these poor innocent babies by the ankles, man, and slang them into the rocks. And then they say, and we're just supposed to forget about those things. We're just supposed to have, complete amnesia. That didn't happen. We got to forgive. They're going to get salvation too. Like, what? Sorry, boss. Not going down. We just got to reading the same similar testimonies that was happening in the Caribbean islands and the indigenous populations over there when the Spaniards came over and wreaked havoc on our people. Now, this is where we get a little bit of hope and inspiration, because remember, even Revelation 18 says, prepare, reward her double, even as she rewarded thee. Isaiah 14:21 says, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers. So the excuse of, it wasn't me, I wasn't there, it's not my fault, you can't blame me. Hey, I don't make the rules, I just live by them. The Lord said, prepare slaughter for who? His children, the descendants of what and why? For the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the face of the world with what? Cities. So Esau, the Spaniards, they still around, they're gonna have to be taken care of. Psalm 137. And reading verse 9. It says, happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. Yeah, because what? They did that to us. Look at this, verse 8. Oh, daughter of Babylon, who are to be destroyed. They ain't talking about old Babylon. It says the daughter, meaning the offspring, the spiritual representation of Babylon. This is who? America. Who are to be destroyed. That's the end all judgment for this place. Who are to be destroyed. Happy shall he be that rewarded thee as thou hast served us. That's why when Revelation 18 says reward her double, that's the reward. They're going to get 2 times worse than what they did to us. It says, happy shall he be that dasheth thy little ones against the stones. And you can have a sympathetic ear all you want to and sympathetic eyes. But guess what? Again, I don't make the rules. I just live by them. Because what did they do? The Spaniards made bets as to who would slit a man in 2 or cut off his head with 1 blow. I mean, they was doing this for sport and then making wagers on us. Or they open up his bowels. If they could cut somebody, man, and if his intestines and his stomach lining and his kidneys and his liver and his spleen all fell out at once, man, that you won the bet. You could swing with 1 swipe of the sword and decapitate a man, you won the bet. If you could chop a man in half, you won the bet. They tore the babies from their mother's breast by their feet and dashed their heads against the rock. Didn't we just get to reading that same thing? The same spirits in these people, man, whether they be the Greeks or the Spaniards, Their vehement hatred for our people, man, resonates within their spirit and it's evident. How would they be doing the same type of torturous methods over 2,500 years later? Not even that long ago. Let's say almost 2,000 years later. They went and did the same things. Do you understand how evil this is? Maybe 2,000. You talking about one? Mm, you talking maybe 167, 164 down. Yeah. I mean, you talking about damn near 16, 1700 years later, they still were doing the same type of torturous methods, man. They spitted the bodies out of other babes together with their mothers and all who were before them on their swords. They hanged Indians by the 13s in honor of the reverence. So if anybody's wondering, were the so-called blacks the only ones being lynched? No. Were the so-called blacks the only ones who were getting burnt alive? No. They did it to all of us. Look at this. Uh, to Columbus, the Arawaks, some of whose groups were known as Taínos, were artless and generous with what they have to such a degree as no one would believe. But he who had seen it of anything they have, if it be asked for, they never say no, but do rather invite the persons to accept it and show as much lovingness as though they would gave their hearts. See, that's the gift and the curse of our people, man. When it came down to our enemies coming over, some of the tribes definitely rebelled, fought, and went to war with them. But many of our people, man, gave them the benefit of the doubt. Sirach 12 and 10 tells us never trust thy enemy. But what do? We open up our arms, offer them food, teach them how to live off the land, give them learn about insecticides, how to hunt, how to fish, how to, build shelters, how to give them all. And then guess what? End up getting slaughtered and destroyed and land swiped up and colonized and the whole nine after that. Let's read some more. All right. Now this also was part of the usages of the buffalo. Now it says gave ornaments, ropes, the tail for brushes. No, I'm sorry. Matter of fact, let me fix this now because it's a little out of order. Uh, this part should be here, I believe. Let me see. Yeah. All right. So now this is the continuing part here. Notice it says all the uses for the buffalo: rope, splint, thongs. Can, all right, there we go. Containers, Salaki. We got to sometimes we gotta, make adjustments as we go. All right, so bear with me. It says containers, the hair for hairdressers, ornaments and ropes, the tail for brushes, the horns for cups, fire carriers and ladles, the hooves for glue and rattles, the skulls for ceremonies and rituals, the beard for ornamentation, the bladder for sinews, pouches and bags, the muscles for thread, glue and sinews, the paunch for the lining of cups, basins, and buckets, the scrotum for rattles, the stomach for medicines and the lining of containers, the bones for clubs, sleds, game, dice. You hear that? Dice. I mean, Negroes and Hispanics and Native Americans out there shooting dice. Native Americans owning casinos. Right? This is all in the spirit. Knives, scrapers, awls, digging sticks, and other implements and utensils. The chips for fuel, the hide for clothing, robes, cradles, bags, logic covers, dolls, and 100 other products. We left nothing for waste. This is on page 20. The other page is on page 19, showing you how much we relied upon that buffalo, man. We used it for everything, and it was stripped from us. Thine ox shall be violently taken away from me. Now, getting back into let me see what time. What we looking at the time wise? Because Did want to, Salakia, two of these things open. I don't know what happened. All right. Too much technical stuff going on here, man. I don't want to stop the spirit. I'm going to stop there, right? We're going to stop part three there. We're going to pick some more up on the next go round, most high permit. All right. All praise, honor, glory to the most high. Prayerfully, man, this is edifying. I know I had a couple little mix-ups with the slides. Hopefully, the information streamlined to your spirit, man, so that you could, you know, uh, pick up what I'm putting down. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm gonna end this particular Feed the Lions episode and part three of who the lost 10 tribes of Israel are. We're gonna pick it back up in the near future. Check your notifications for when they be continuing. If you find this information helpful, useful, be sure to like and subscribe or even share it with brothers and sisters who you may feel as though may need this in order to help them wake up, right? So with that being said, I'm gonna give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, and I'm gonna say shalom.